Aloha, welcome back to Repairing Earth. I'm your host, Emily Cristobal, and in today's episode, we are talking to some researchers who are working out at the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument. They are doing some really important research out there about Hawaiian monk seals and Hawaiian green sea turtles. To talk about this and more, we are joined by NOAA's Hope Ronco and Mary Lou Stamen. Thank you so much for joining us today. First things first, I was hoping you guys could briefly introduce yourself and talk a little bit about the work that you guys do out there.
Yes, so my name is Hope Ronco. I'm a marine biologist with NOAA Fisheries. I work under the Protected Species Division here in Honolulu as part of the Pacific Island Fisheries Science Center. And so every year we go out to Papahanaumokuakea and we deploy field teams to multiple sites. This year we are just focused primarily on Lalo, or French frigate shoals. And so Lalo is actually a remote atoll, if you guys know what that is, with about 8 very small islands. And so we deploy a team. They're living on Turn Island, which is one of the larger islands there. And then they will be out for the season monitoring Hawaiian monk seals and Hawaiian green sea turtles, or honu.
I'm Mary Lou Stamen. I work with Hope at NOAA's Pacific Islands Fisheries Science Center. But I'm a marine science coordinator with the Marine Turtle Biology and Assessment Program with the Cooperative Institute for Marine and Atmospheric Research, which is actually through the University of Hawaii. And so I mentioned I'm with the Turtle Program. And so part of the work that we do up in the monument is monk seal research, and part of it is sea turtle research. And so Hope and I represent 2 people who have gone up with each of those to research each of those species.
So your team is out at Lalo. How far away is that from the main Hawaiian Islands? I was hoping you could give our viewers a little inside look as to where exactly you guys are working from.
Lalo is about 500 miles northwest of Oahu. So it's very remote. It's actually the closest island that we deploy a camp to each year. But that is still very far. And typically we don't have cell service or internet. We use satellite communications, and we live in a camp there. So with the researchers get dropped off via ship. It takes 2 to 3 days just to get there, and then are left with everything that they need for the season.
And for the whole season, how long are you guys out there for?
A field season can last anywhere from 3 or 4 months to 6 months.
Is there anything that you both prepare for before heading out there?
That's a good question. It takes a lot of preparation and training for us to send our teams out. So before the teams deploy, we do all of our shopping here. We do all of our packing. These islands are really sensitive ecosystems, and we want to make sure we don't introduce any invasive species. So we pack all of our gear into things like buckets or containers that can be closed, so they can be either frozen or fumigated to avoid introducing anything out there. So we bring in our field teams ahead of time. We do a ton of food shopping. And we do all of our packing of gear here at our site on Ford Islands. And then we treat all of that before the cruise, then we load it onto the ship and go. And so aside from the gear, we also do a lot of training. So we do small boat training. We do, animal handling training. We train our teams on all of our research protocols. And it's about a month ahead of the season that we have everyone on site. And for us here full time, it's more than that, even before the teams get here. Mary Lou, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, and I'll just add that part of our training and preparation of going up into the monument is recognizing and preparing our teams to go into this really special, protected, and culturally important area. And so a big part of our training is we do a Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument pre-access briefing, so permitting, a lot of the rules that Hope just mentioned with biosecurity, but also learning cultural practices. We work with cultural practitioners before going into the monument. The monument is co-managed by NOAA, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the state of Hawaii and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. And so all of those co-managers work together to make sure that anyone who gets this opportunity to go up into the monument are prepared kind of in all realms and in all ways to be present and appreciative of their time up there.
Absolutely. That's such a special experience that you're able to do out there and such important work. Going into that work, I was hoping you guys could explain what exactly your day-to-day schedule is like.
We have, two research priorities. We have the Hawaiian monk seal research, and then we also have the honu research. And so they're almost opposite schedules. So I'm going to talk you through, what the SEAL teams typically do, and Mary Lou will talk you through turtles a little bit more. So our teams, they're sleeping in tents. We have, they're pretty sizable canvas wall tents. So we have a kitchen tent, office tent, and each person has their own personal sleeping tent. So you wake up in the morning, typically you end up in the kitchen tent with your coffee and having breakfast. And then for the SEAL teams, for the SEAL team, it's 4 right now at Lalo. So they will do like a conditions check and see what their small boat operations can be that day. So if the conditions are good, they'll go grab their boats from their moorings, load everything up, and then head out into the atoll. And they typically start at the farthest away islet. And so they will drop, a couple people at each island, and they'll go ashore and survey. So our teams are looking at, Hawaiian monk seals in general, as well as the honu. But for us, our priorities are moms and pups. So identifying and monitoring moms and pups, juveniles, and also like seals of concern. So like seals with injuries or other things that might affect their survival. And then when pups wean, we also apply tags to them so we can continue to identify them throughout their lives. And sometimes we move them between islets within the atoll, just depending on where survival is better. We want them to be set up for success. And so our teams, will make their way back down or back towards Turn Island, where their main camp is. And at the end of the day, they'll bring their boats back, unload everything at the dock, re-moor them, put them back at the mooring, and then head into camp. And so for monk seals, I think often they do like one day of boating, and then the next day will be data processing and management, and then they'll go out again and kind of that back and forth.
Very cool. And how about you, Mary Lou? What is your work like?
Yeah, and so for turtles, as Hope mentioned, we work on a bit of opposite schedule as the monk seal team. So Lalo is a really important place for honu because you can see honu in the main Hawaiian Islands, but they only nest pretty much up here in Papahanaumokuakea at Lalo specifically. And so we have over 90% of the whole population comes up here to nest. So we really want to make sure our work is focused around their nesting, which happens at night. So our teams, our day starts around 2 o'clock, let's say in the afternoon. Wake up, get ready, and then go hit the beach for a basking survey. And basking or resting, hauled out on the sand, is a behavior that turtles have only been observed doing in 3 places in the whole world. So here, Galapagos and parts of Australia, we have turtles that bask. And it provides a really unique research opportunity for us to work with the animals while they're hauled out and resting. And so we carefully work around the animals, trying not to disturb them, count them, see how many males and females we have, and if we can see any of their tags. Then the team will come back to camp, take a dinner break. It's kind of like our lunch break, and maybe get a sneak a nap in before the night survey starts. And then night surveys are from around 9 p.m. to 5 a.m., depending on the level of activity. And similar to the other surveys, we're carefully working around the animals, trying to see who is there, how many females are laying eggs, how many eggs are they laying. And so that's really the bulk of our work is working at night, working with those animals. We use a red headlamp. So we typically don't get as tan as the Hawaiian monk seal researchers. But the skies are so beautiful at night. I wouldn't trade it. It's so dark up there and the stars are gorgeous. So it's a really different but unique experience. And then you watch the sunrise and you go to bed.
That's so awesome. I feel like just hearing from what you're saying, it's definitely a different scene of nature out there. Definitely more untouched than it is here on the main Hawaiian Islands. And I wanted to go back. You guys have been out there since May. What are some of the findings that you've gotten so far? Is there any numbers that you guys can share?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's hard to know so far with monk seals. So at Turn Island, we typically see pupping a little bit later in the season, or sorry, at Lalo in general. So the teams are reporting, some early pups here and there, and they're starting to see, more pregnant adult females. But we don't have any firm numbers just yet. We'll have to report back at the end of the season. We have a lot of seals that move between different sites too, and we use different data analyses to determine which site seals get assigned to. So it's a little bit of crunching at the end to give you full numbers, but so far it looks really good. And the team has seen quite a few juveniles from previous years. And one of our challenges at Lalo is with juvenile survival. We see lower numbers sometimes than the other field sites. So potentially, I think we're looking like a really great year.
Yeah, and Mary Lou, what are you seeing with the honu out there?
For turtles, it's always interesting because we don't know what we're going to get when we get up to the island. We could have a year where there are 100 nesting females or 800 nesting females, and that has to do with their natural migrations. Sea turtles don't migrate to lay their eggs every year. So we have these big fluctuations just naturally occurring, and 3 people get up there, and we have to see what we find. And so this year it looks like a good medium year, I would say. So far, could be too soon to tell. We're just getting into peak nesting season, which is very exciting, also very busy. And what that would look like on a typical night is maybe 40 to 50 females crawling on the beach in each night. And then during a basking survey, maybe up to 80 individual animals that we're looking for and counting. Yeah. So a lot of, compared to the main Hawaiian Islands, it is really interesting and special to see those higher concentrations all in one place on one island.
Yeah, totally. I can only imagine. And, talking about threats, what are some of the main threats honu and monk seals face?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I can speak for both of us when I say that there are many diverse threats affecting both of these species. So we divide Hawaiian monk seals in some ways between the main Hawaiian Island population and then the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. They face slightly different threats just based on mostly, where humans are and, where they're a little bit more remote. And so in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, we see a lot of challenges with habitat loss. And so with climate change and rising waters, we're seeing these very small islands just slowly disappear. And a lot of them are only maybe a couple feet above sea level. And you come out there and, Mary Lou can say the same for turtles, but you'll see, like 10, 15 seals on a very tiny little space. They're all right up next to each other. And so we need, for monk seals need that land to pup, to rest, and then to molt, which is something they do annually. And so they need this habitat. And so right now, habitat loss is a big one. And we are also just seeing, entanglements. That's still a constant issue. Things like seals stuck in nets or with things stuck on their muzzle. And we also face some malnutrition. And so we do have seals like kind of in that wean pup to year long phase. They struggle to, I think, forage successfully and learn to forage. And so we see kind of this big drop for many reasons between wean pups and survival to year 1. So that would be northwestern Hawaiian Islands. In the main Hawaiian Islands, we also see a little bit more of disease. We see occasionally intentional killings. And we have a bigger issue maybe with hooks and seals ingesting or, having hooks stuck in their mouths. So kind of all different things.
Like Hope said, for turtles, we do have different threats in the main Hawaiian Islands and up in the monument. In the main Hawaiian Islands, our number one threat is interactions with fishing equipment, so entanglements or hookings. And then up in the monument at the nesting site, Um, so their primary nesting island, actually, where we used to have our camp, was East Island. And East Island has been regularly monitored by researchers since 1973, so 50 years this year. And that's where a majority of the turtles were nesting until 2018, when a Hurricane Walaka, came through and severely damaged the island. And so we moved our camp to Turn Island, to where the Monk Seal program has their camp. We started looking at more of an atoll-wide picture, all of the islands, where are the turtles moving as the island takes a slow amount of time to rebuild and become large enough to survey again. And so in addition to sea level rise and increased frequency in storms, climate change is also affecting nesting sea turtles, because they have what's called temperature dependent sex determination, which means that the temperature of the eggs while they develop actually determines if they're going to be male or female. So if you can imagine in a warming planet, if your turtle nests are all getting warmer, you're going to start seeing a lot more females around. And if the males can keep up, that's great. But if the population turns all female, obviously that would have severe consequences for their reproduction. So that is a very important factor and threat that we're keeping an eye on up on the islands, with temperature, data loggers in the nests, and trying to determine if we can determine if the hatchlings are male and female and at what ratios right now.
Absolutely. And, bringing up the issues of climate change and these animals getting stuck in netting and getting hooked, what are some preventable measures people can take to keep these animals safe?
For seals, like we recommend barbless hooks for fishing. They come out of seals a little bit easier. We also recommend, I think, like removing all leftover line and hooks, getting rid of that and disposing of that appropriately. One big threat that monk seals face in the main Hawaiian Islands is disease. And one of the big problems we're facing right now is toxoplasmosis. So that's a parasite that's actually transmitted through the feces of cats. And so we encourage everyone to, keep their cats indoors if possible. It's a really tricky disease, but we've seen it affect adult female seals, especially, and pregnant adult females. So, really in an effort to protect those seals, we encourage folks to keep their cats indoors. And then, for any monk seal sighting, we request that people report that. I have a number. It's the NOAA Marine Mammal Stranding Hotline. It's 888-256-9840. But for any seal on shore, you're welcome to, please, we ask for that to be reported. And, even if it's an interaction with a fisherman who hooks a seal, we've had several seals that were hooked that were reported by the fisherman in the situation, and we would not have known, and those animals would have died otherwise. But because they were reported by fishermen, we were actually able to identify those animals, find them again, and remove the hooks, so saving them. So please report, and we, anytime you see anything, report, and we have folks standing by on those hotlines.
And is there anything you wanted to add, Mary Lou?
Yes, while you are out and about in the main Hawaiian Islands here, if you see a turtle or a seal, we please ask that you respect viewing guidelines that NOAA has. So for sea turtles, that's about 10 feet minimum. Further is great if you see a turtle basking on the beach, or if you're swimming snorkeling in the water. And for monk seals, it's quite a bit further. They are mammals and they are more sensitive to disturbance. And so I believe the rule of thumb is what applies. If you hold out your thumb in front of you, and if you can see the monk seal sticking out from behind your thumb, you are too close. So please back up and be respectful. And then in addition, we have a lot of our turtles, when we work with them for research, we give them a small little white painted number on their shell. And that allows us to continue to monitor that animal without having to get too close to it. And so if you see one of our turtles or a turtle that we've worked with either through rehabilitation or our tagging program, we want to hear about it. And so the way that we have, or what we have set up for that, is called honu count. So the best way to find that is actually just to Google or use a web browser and search for honu count. And that'll take you to, you'll find a link to our website and then a reporting form. It's really easy to use. You can tell us where you saw it, what was it doing, what number was it, photos, we love photos. All of this, of course, information collected from a distance greater than 10 feet. And especially when we have really rehabilitated turtles, where we've had to amputate flippers due to fishing line entanglements or other illnesses, we want to know that they're doing well, and your sightings really help us with that. So that is through honu count.
Yes, and we're definitely going to dive more into how the larger public can be stewards of these animals. But before we go to that, I wanted to go back to the relationship between monk seals and honu. Is there any relationship between the two, or do they kind of just coexist? It definitely seems like there's a lot of them out there.
They coexist. I think for the most part, they tend to just ignore each other. We have them kind of lined up. You'll see them lined up in a row. And I know Mary Lou does a lot more. Like Mary Lou has worked at Lalo specifically. I've worked at a lot of the other sites, but the density of turtles is a lot greater at Lalo. So Mary Lou, I would defer to you.
Yeah, I talked about what it looks like right now with maybe 50 to 80 turtles on the beach, but a big year is over 250 turtles in one area on the beach. And it's incredible. And that beach space is shared with seals. And so we're always very careful working around both species. But it is fun to see them laying together. It seems like the monk seals like to snuggle up to turtles. You'll often see them curled up around a turtle, and the turtles don't seem to mind. And that's one of my favorite things to see out there. And yeah, mostly snuggling together is, I would say, their most interaction. Otherwise, probably ignoring each other.
Aw, that sounds so adorable. And, going back to all the work that you do, why is this research so important?
That is a great question too. So, the priority for our camps is really to conduct these surveys and collect data. We're trying to figure out what the populations look like for both species. So with Hawaiian monk seals, we have often camps at many sites within the monument, but also we'll do like single day surveys at certain islands like Nihoa or Mokumanamana. And then we bring all of that data back here, combine it with our main Hawaiian Island data. We can get an idea of what the population size is, and an estimate. And then as we look more closely, at the main Hawaiian Islands versus Northwesterns, that data helps us determine, what the threats are, and that helps us figure out how we can mitigate for those. So it's the recovery is our ultimate goal, the recovery of the species. And we're really excited in the past few years for Hawaiian monk seals. We've seen the population actually look like the numbers are, tentatively and slowly starting to grow. So this could be a really big turning point for the species as a whole.
And the number of nesting sea turtles, honu, up at Lalo is also slowly increasing. But it's really important for us to keep an eye on those threats, especially the new ones, the loss of habitat, the shrinking of the islands, and other hazards and threats. Something else that's so important about our teams being up there is that day-to-day presence on the island and being able to observe what's happening. There are some old relics, especially on Turn Island. It had a lot of uses during the war, and since then, with some structures left behind. And so our team's there every day, watching, keeping an eye on the animals and helping them when they become entrapped in one of the structures, or also removing the structures. They work so hard to remove marine debris that washes up or other barriers to the animals that just let them be animals. And so part of the observational process that we do up there is called Huli'ia. It's a project through the University of Hawaii's Sea Grant. And that involves, on a daily basis, being present, documenting changes to the landscape, Mauka Tumakai, and observing moon phases, the growth of plants, seabirds. So we're not just there studying our own species that we're assigned to. We're there just taking it all in and making sure that we are truly understanding the big picture, the whole ecosystem of what's happening. And it's a really great way for the teams then weekly to come together and check in. What are some things that they've noticed? What are some changes they've seen? I know the big talk of this week has been about the moon. There's a very tiny sliver of moon this week that looks very pretty as it sets every night around sunset. And butterflies. There are butterfly species that they hadn't noticed before. And we've been trying to figure out what kind of butterflies they're seeing passing through the islands.
Wow, that's so cool. And, I have to ask, what do these butterflies look like?
The butterflies are black and orange on one side and kind of like a yellow, white, and black on the underside. And the caterpillars are smaller than I would have thought. I had seen some very large caterpillars out there a few years ago, but these ones are very small.
Ooh, that's super interesting. You never know, maybe one of our viewers out there listening, maybe that sounds really familiar to them and they could share what they might think the butterfly is. But with our last few minutes, I was hoping you guys could really just hit home of how the public can help honu, can help monk seals, and what they can do to keep these animals safe.
For Hawaiian monk seals, I said it before, I'll say it again, is just reporting what you see. And so we want to know, healthy animals, but we also really want to know if people are seeing injured animals or animals with hooks or something like that. We've found, I'm going to echo what Mary Lou said, it's so important for us to spend time on the ground at these sites to actually help animals when needed. So pulling them out of, entrapments when we can and disentangling them. And so we've crunched our numbers and we, within, the current population, this is maybe a couple of years back, but so we estimate that like about 30% of Hawaiian monk seals are alive today due to the direct intervention by field researchers, and that can be us and our partners. And that includes, directly to an animal, but also for the maternal lineage. So like if a mom was saved from something, like that also includes her pups that we would have lost otherwise. So, these on the ground efforts and these direct interventions are extremely important. So, for whatever we're seeing in the main Hawaiian Islands, we just encourage people to, report seal sightings and help us. And that way we can, move forward with everything we can do for recovery.
And I'll add for turtles, Hope mentioned it before, but we rely so heavily on reports from fisher people and working closely with them. And we have this campaign that it's okay to help. We want to get phone calls about hooked seals or hooked turtles. If you accidentally hook a turtle, instead of cutting your line and just letting it free, the line is the biggest threat for the animals. So reeling that turtle in safely if you can, cutting as much of the line down to the hook if you can. Don't worry about the hook, it'll fall out, but just getting rid of that fishing line and helping that animal, or calling and letting us know so that we can try and help. We rely so much on the community to it's like a partnership of stewardship for these animals. So we appreciate the calls and we appreciate everyone wanting to help. I just want to add that we are hiring every year. So if you or people or your audience want to know how to really directly get involved, every fall we announce through the University of Hawaii employment website. We put out job announcements for this work every summer.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for taking the time to talk story with me. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure our viewers did as well. But I just also wanted to send a bigger thank you for all the work that you and your team are doing out there at the Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument. It really is just awesome to hear about your experience. And, hopefully we can reconnect again with some of your findings when you guys return later this year. For more stories like these, or for more episodes of Repairing Earth, head to hawaiinewsnow.com or listen wherever you get your podcasts. This is your host, Emily Cristobal, and mahalo. Mahalo for listening.